Webheads, welcome to another episode of Worthy Ones, the video series where I take all the #1 issues that I read for the current comic book week and deem them worthy or not worthy. Guys, welcome back to Comic Book Corner 2.0. I'm Mike Spider Slayer, and let's dive into this. Okay, so the first book we're going to be talking about today is Star Wars: The High Republic Adventures. This is issue 1. This book was actually recommended to me, saying that, Mike, you should cover this and see if this one is worthy or not worthy. And the whole reason why I wanted to pick this up also was because it's an all ages book. So I wanted to see if it was worthy for the kids and worthy for the adults as well. We all know Star Wars, whether you're a younger child at this point or an old man like me. This is a mini series. It's one of 4. The price point of this book is $4.99. When you look inside the art, it actually is very serviceable art. It's bright, it's vibrant. There's a lot of colors in it, something that a younger reader would be attracted to. We get to see these pinup pages in here as well. And so it's pretty good. I wouldn't say there's maybe a ton of action in this book, but that's okay because this is a #1 issue and there's a lot of setup going on what things are to come. Now, the one thing that I didn't like about this book is you get introduced to a bunch of characters in this book. I think it's maybe 5 or 6 of them, maybe 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. One more, 8 in this comic. And you never really get to know who they actually are unless they were in other comics in the past, which maybe they were. But still, as a new reader, you want to know more about these characters from the start, and they kind of just thrusted them into this adventure. We have this one character that's kind of like a Anakin Skywalker. He's a young Padawan. His name is Koron. He's flying a ship, and then all of a sudden, the ship collides into another ship, and we see our heroes stranded on this world. And they have to get help because one of their Jedis is severely injured. I'm going to deem this book worthy. I thought it was an entertaining read. It definitely has some setup going on to the point where you're like, wow, what is this strange entity that's taking over these Jedi's minds? And I like the art, and I feel like for a younger audience, this is very well done. If you're not familiar with the timeline of Star Wars, it gives you a current timeline of everything that's kind of been going on, right? We get even Andor, that new show that I haven't watched, is even in here, and you get the Bad Batch. So there's everything from the movies to just the different timelines of Star Wars just in general. So if I had to give this comic book a grade, I would say this is a B-. I think, older audience can appreciate Star Wars here, and I feel like a younger audience can appreciate this. The only thing that I didn't like is we got thrusted into this adventure and we don't really know too much about these characters. So when you get a character that's injured, you're kind of like, who cares? They can die. Like, I don't know anything about that character. Like, why should I care if she lives or dies, right? I mean, I may be cold-hearted, but I feel like when you read a comic book, right, and you have a possible character death or someone is severely injured and they're trying to rescue them, you want to care for that character. And here, for me, there wasn't really a character standout here, right? So as time will tell, we'll see if we can get attached to future characters. You only have 4 issues, so they better move it along. As the next book we're talking about is from Whatnot Publishing. This is Liquid Kill issue 1. A reminder, guys, I have a link in my description box below. You can use that link and create a Whatnot profile absolutely for free. Doesn't cost you anything. It does help support my channel. But when you use that link and you buy something on Whatnot for the first time, it's going to give you $15 off of that first purchase. That's $15. So if it's a $10 comic book, that book's free for you, or whatever it is that you choose to buy, right? Whatnot's really fun. I actually was on it the other day, and I bought quite a few books on there, and I'll be doing a haul very shortly once I receive those books, but it's a lot of fun, man, and if you don't buy anything, at least it's fun to watch, right? Okay, so link in the description box below. Get yourself $15. Liquid Kill issue 1. It's about this female by the name of Kai who was raised by a mob boss, right? And so what this issue really is about her like adopted father taking over the reins and becoming the new leader of this organization. We really don't know who the organization is or what their purpose is. We don't even know really about the main character. It's just she's 20 years older now and she's killing people in the ocean. So maybe that's why it's called Liquid Kill, right? Don't know. The artwork is very dark. It's hard to make out certain things. I feel like it does have a little bit of probably this anime style to it, which, you know, it's not bad, but it was just like, man, I would want something more, something a little bit more with colors in it that makes the comic pop. It's just too dark, right? And I just wanted more from it. Like, I think this was like lost potential here, but and here she is here. That's Kai. That's that main character. So at the end of the day, I'm going to deem this book not worthy. It has an interesting premise, but it's like there's just wasn't enough there for me to keep reading. Unlike the Wesley Snipes book, I enjoyed that one, right? This one just, there wasn't anything there, and for the price point of this book of $3.99, I felt like, you know, is the artwork always going to be this way? Is it always going to be dark and gloomy? Is the story plot not going to have much progression? So it's like I'm not really going to take a chance with it, right? So if I had to give it a grade, I'm probably going to give this one a C-. We had potential, but I felt like it could be much better. All right, next one we're going to be talking about is Blue Book issue 1. This is done by James Tynion. This is a story about supposed true UFO situations that happened, and it's told in comic book form. So when I heard about this, I was like, I don't know, that sounds kind of cool, right? And when I opened up this book, you know what? It was just like all in blue and white colors, which was fine. Like, actually, it didn't really bother me because what it does is it gives you this kind of this, almost this horrific tone to it. And it has this suspense feel to it, which I actually enjoyed. It is a very quick read, and it was about these two people back in 1961 where they were being followed by this UFO. And they kind of can't believe that it's actually happening. So they're trying to get back home from vacation before this hurricane hits, and they're driving all night. This UFO in the distance, and they're like, whoa, what is that? And they're like, you know, using binoculars to try to find it. They come out of their car and they realize that this thing is actually following them. And you're like, whoa, man. You're like, well, that's kind of creepy. And they get out and the thing is like right in front of them. And as the reader, you're like, oh my God, what is this thing going to do? And it gets closer and closer. And this guy gets so close to them that he can actually see their faces. And the dude realizes that, oh my God. He's like, Betty, get in the car. They're going to be after us. And then the book just ends. Not the book, this particular story. And then it goes to this other random story with this thing that happens in Coney Island. And I was like, whoa, wait a second. I'm like, I don't care about this story. I was like, this one's not even close to the other one. It's black and white, has to do with these freaking elephants, and it's just weird. And I was so disappointed that they interrupted that main story to bring this other thing, and I didn't even care about it. I was just upset. And when you get done, right, it's the continuation in the next issue of that same story. And I'm like, dude, that sucks, man. Just make it one story. And if you're going to do one shots, just do one shots. Don't make two separate stories out there. I just did not like that at all. So in that case, this book is not worthy. I don't need another anthology book. We have plenty of them, right? All you had to do was just make this book one continuous story, and if it's over after one issue, then bring on another UFO story. So with that, I'm gonna bring this book to a C. I liked it, right? But that second half just dragged it down and completely took me out of a story where I was so into it, and it was such a page turner that this just dragged it completely down. And they're just like, man, now they're forcing me to buy another issue, and I'm not going to buy another issue. It was good, but it wasn't that great to where I'm going to be like, I needed to know what happens in that second book. It's a quick read. It's a page turner, but I don't need another anthology. All right, X-Men fans, here we go. We got the next tie-in book for Sins of Sinister. This is Immortal X-Men issue 1. Great cover art here, and also great interior art by Paco Mandina. He's been doing all these tie-ins, all the artwork for all of them. I feel like that's kind of a hefty task, and if he continues doing the art on all of these tie-ins through their entirety, I think that's pretty impressive, right? Here's some of the artwork here. The colors are just like bright and vibrant, and I really love it. It really immerses you into the story. We did just get to see some cool battles here between like clones of Scott Summers and Emma Frost, which was so much fun. And it took a hot minute for this book to get to where it needed to get to, where you were like, oh, this is a good comic book, right? We find out in this book that we have the Quiet Council that's against Sinister, and they want to reshape the world in their fashion. Now, don't forget, this takes place in 10 years into the future with that Sinister gene. So with the Sinister gene, they have that gene inside of them, and they're like, oh, well, I want to do this in the world, and I want to do that in the world. And they want to get rid of the original Mr. Sinister. Sinister realizes there's a flaw in that whole plan that he came up with, so he needed a reset point. Unfortunately, if you've been reading, he hasn't been able to reset because his lab went missing. Okay, and this is based off of the main story and the other tie-ins as well. And so he's coming across different versions of himself, and he's trying to talk and find out what he can strategize, find a secondary lab, and all that kinds of other stuff like that. And it took a while to get there because there's a lot of conversation between Mr. Sinister and another version of himself. They're drinking a lot of tea. It's like, okay, move on from the freaking tea stuff. And then once you get to the point with Sinister going to take on Emma Frost in this book, I thought that was great. I mentioned the Scott Summers clones and all these ultimatums that Emma Frost gave Mr. Sinister to join the Quiet Council once again. He actually went missing for a little while in this comic book, and Emma had to go chasing him down. It was a fun comic. The second half of it really turned it on, and I'm going to deem this book worthy. I tell you what, guys, the Sins of Sinister event has actually been halfway decent, and it's been above average for me. So I'm going to give this book a B. This was a solid read with great artwork. My hat's off to the people that are writing this story and the people that are drawing it. Well, maybe the one person, Paco Mandina. But if you're looking for a decent X-Men event, hey, check out Sins of Sinister. You might not be disappointed. Here we go. DC Universe's Lazarus Planet Omega, issue 1. Now, even though this is a continuation of a story, it's still got a number 1 on the cover, which means I can deem it worthy or not worthy. So let's talk about this. The first issue, a lot of people were like, wow, this is really great. This has potential. And then you get those one-shots where there is no real story. It's just a bunch of one-shots of random characters that develop powers that they didn't have before, characters that were introduced into the DC universe for the first time. And that was that, right? After you get done reading this issue, did anything really change? Did all our heroes go back to normal? Or did some of them retain these new abilities that they received? And these new characters that were introduced, did they just go back to normal human? I think everything reverted back, because when we read Superman later on, or when I talk about Superman, I'll make a perfect example of that, okay? So Lazarus Planet Omega was just like an art book for me. We have great artwork in this comic book, and the colors are really nice as well, because every color tone that happens in this comic represents almost somebody's power set, right? Whether it was like, say, Superman with his X-ray beams, like you got a lot of this orange going on in here. Zatanna's, magic. She's got that purple because she wears like a purple suit and all that stuff. So all the color tones and all the action in this book was just like beautiful. And as a flip book and as a fantasy adventure, you find yourself immersed with that artwork, right? And so that's why I felt like there was very little dialogue. And actually, if you didn't have any dialogue in this story, it would have been just fine, because there was really nothing that happened except these guys battling each other and explaining how they can beat somebody and how they couldn't beat somebody. And I'm going to use my powers and your powers are haywire. The only thing you got out of this book is they needed Black Alice to kind of reset everything, absorb all the magic so things could go back to normal. And that's what happens in the comic book. That's really it. Everything happens that way, and then you wind up seeing Damian and Batman kind of reconcile their differences, and that's going to continue in Batman vs. Robin in that final issue. That was the comic book. So at the end of the day, I'm going to deem this book not worthy, because there was nothing really that happened to the point where it's like, man, do I need to spend $6 on this comic book that's going to take me about 3 minutes to get through and doesn't accomplish really anything? I mean, you could have predicted that, right? The writing was on the wall, because when you got done reading that alpha issue, you're kind of like, well, where do we go now? We get a bunch of one-shots. And then how do you conclude it with this Omega issue, right? So I think as an art perspective, it was like an A book. But as a story perspective, it was like a D, right? So I think at the end of the day, I'm probably going to give this book like a C. It was a pretty book to look at, and that's just about it, guys. All right, guys, here we go. Tim Seeley and Tony Fleecy's Loco Man, issue 1. It doesn't get any more 90s feel than that. How great looking is that? It's like Young Blood, Amazing Spider-Man all mixed into one. Old school image feel, like it's awesome, right? Hey, but just when you thought that was the main cover, just kidding. How sweet is that? There's 2 covers on this comic book. When I was looking at cover art, I thought these were 2 separate covers. So this is almost like 2 stories in one. Actually, it is 2 stories in one, but it enhances the story. And you can read them in different orders. So you can read this part of the story first, where it introduces Crossjack, who is the main character, as a superhero, right? Or you can flip it back over and you can enter the story this way, as Jack as just a regular guy on a park bench. And you're like, well, who is this guy? Wherever you read it from, it's not wrong. It's just you'll get a little bit different experience on how you read it. So I'm like, man, where do I start when I read this? So right away, with this comic book in my hand, I'm making a decision. It engages me right from the start, and I love that, okay? So I started with this part of the story where we get to learn about our main character who's sitting on a bus trying to go back home. And he winds up going back home to Farmington, and he goes to his parents, and his parents are kind of disappointed with him. He's trying to, I guess, establish a relationship with them, and they're like, whatever. You lost your job, you did this, you did that. And it was quite entertaining to find out, why is this guy hated on? You're like wondering this whole entire time. Now, the artwork in this book is actually really good. I enjoyed it. This is the non-superhero part. And our main character, Jack, comes across a villain that he does battle against in a bar. He saves these people in a bar, but he's not respected on. He just gets crapped on, and he gets ejected from this bar. He meets up with an old high school friend, and they meet up, they catch up with each other and stuff like that. And then you get his old superhero team that comes up, and he broke contractual agreement, and he can't do any superhero things. He can't use any shields, and otherwise he's gonna have to pay fines and stuff like that. And you're like, wow, that's kind of crappy, right? And then something happens at the end of the story. And then you just kind of get the little letters page and whatnot. And then you can flip that book over and then get the other part of the story where you get to see Crossjack as him as a superhero. And you get to introduce to a team that he once worked with. So not only do you get introduced to Crossjack, but you get introduced to all of his other teammates which I thought was really quite interesting. And again, it doesn't give you a ton about these characters, but it lets you know who these characters are and kind of like their power sets. Like you have Cutting Edge, you have like Softcore, Air Raider, Big Island, who's like a guy like made out of volcano, and then you get this hot one whose her name is like Neon. She's like Dazzler, and it just was awesome. I loved everything about this comic book. The superhero parts, the action parts were bright, vibrant colors. You get to see some of the villains. Worthy, absolutely worthy. If you guys did not pick up Local Man yet, I say pick this book up. I can't wait to see the direction of this book. I give it an A+, because you get the serious side, you get the superhero side, you get to choose which side you want to read first, so it's very engaging that way. It's got the 90s feels for it. A+ all the way around. I can't see somebody not liking this comic book. Let me know in the comments below if you read it, what you thought of it. I'm sure this is the book you guys all been waiting for to hear my thoughts, and this is Superman issue 1 with the Dawn of DC banner on the top of it. Everyone's been waiting for this book, and the early reviews on this book is that this book was actually really good. I can honestly tell you, I'm not a huge Superman fan, so in order to capture me, to continue reading the comic book, it's got to be written damn well, and the art has got to be pretty good. So when I opened up this comic book, I realized obviously that the writer was Joshua Williamson, who also wrote the Robin series, the Damian series, which was phenomenal. I love that series. And when you open up this book, you get this 2-page spread with this artwork, and I was beside myself. I'm like, wow, this looks good. It feels like a more classic Superman, just the way everything was drawn. The facial expressions were really good. Like, check out that facial feature by Livewire. So well done. I love the colors. They're bright and vibrant. And even though this is a modern day comic book, it did have that old school feel. The great thing about this comic is that Lois Lane is now editor-in-chief, while Perry is recovering from the stroke that he had in previous issues. Okay, I love the relationship between Lois and Clark in this comic. Right away, you can feel that romantic relationship that this book should have. Okay, so there was a lot of great things right from the start going for this comic book, and what this story was about was the introductory part of this book was Superman doing battle against Livewire because she got all pissed off because her podcast wound up getting canceled. And so I thought that was hysterical. And when you get introduced to the characters in this comic book, they did it in a very like creative way. Like, so Luthor, for instance, shows up in this part of the comic book, and to represent who he is, they put his like prison tag on there, and they have a picture of him, right? And I thought that was kind of cool. And then when you get Clark Kent, you know, you get to see him writing his articles here, and you get to see the same thing, Clark Kent right there, which represents that. You get Jimmy Olsen, who's talking to Clark, and you see that right there, and it's like a newspaper printing. So the way they did that was just very creative, you know, not just something that's so standard that you see in everyday's comic books. And the person that stands out of everything in here is just Lois Lane. And I loved her voice in this comic book because she's not like this pushover just because she knows everybody. She's trying to be a real editor-in-chief, which, again, everything that was happening in this comic was great. As the story continues, you wind up seeing Clark get this like voice in his ear, and it's Lex Luthor, and he has a proposal for Superman, and he wants to hand over LexCorp and call it Supercorp, and has like the big S shield on it and everything. And so he comes across Mercy Graves, who is the advisor to Lex Luthor. Now, this is going back to the the Omega issue from Lazarus Planet. Now, when we read a one-shot, when it came to this whole Lazarus event, didn't she become part cyborg? There was no indication here that she was like this cyborg and part of Lex Luthor's suit anymore, right? It looked like she was completely human all the way throughout this entire comic book. There was no indication that she went through a transformation or something changed with her. So I'm very curious if something did. So if nothing happened, then that shows you that everything reverted back, okay? So she proposes this business to Superman, and he is very reluctant. I mean, he's just like, I don't know. He's just like, I like the proposal. He's like, it's quite interesting. But what sets him over the edge is basically a vision that he sees that Mercy proposed to him, and he didn't like it. And so he was very upset. Then all of a sudden he does this battle with Parasite. Parasite takes over. And then we go to this weird villain that I don't think I know. If you guys know, let me know in the comments below. And I don't know this guy in the newspaper article at the end either. I don't know if you guys know who that is or who it's supposed to be. Who is this? Who is that Cyborg Superman? So I was a little bit confused at the very last page where it kind of took me a little bit out of the comic book. And then they give you a little bit of preview of what's to happen in the future with Superman. I'm going to deem this book worthy. I thought there was a lot of things going for this comic book. My only issue was Mercy on if she is this cybernetic thing that she became, or did she revert back, because it's not explained there, okay? And then my other thing was that last page, I seemed a little bit lost. I felt like I was missing something there. And so for a grade, I'm going to give this book an A. I really enjoyed it. There was just those couple of things that I was like, not sure what's going on. Am I missing something? Am I not missing something? The Mercy thing was a little bit of a continuity thing. If they even put just a little bit of a dialogue box just to let me know, or editors know, on what's up with Mercy. Not that she's a major character, but it's something that did happen in that one shot. And I want to know if anything stuck from Lazarus Planet, right? So again, that's just me being picky, but I love the comic book and I love where it's going, and I love this old school kind of feel the way Clark is, right? So yeah, I definitely recommend Superman issue 1. I want to know in the comments below what you enjoyed so far this week. And of course, guys, if you want more content, you can check out my new comic book day haul, everything I picked up. It was quite the hefty week. And guys, keep buying, keep collecting, but always remember, read those comics. Guys, I'll see you real soon. Thanks for watching.